Good morning. Welcome to this press conference on global CEOs announcing collective action on cyber resilience. We are live here from Davos at the annual meeting 2022. Welcome everyone in the room and welcome our audience watching the live stream. I am delighted today to be joined by a wonderful panel to share their insights and thoughts on how to stop harmful cyber attacks. I am Daidi from the media team at the World Economic Forum. To my left is my colleague Alexander Klimberg, head of Center for Security from the World Economic Forum. Next to him is Jen Easterly, Director of US Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. And then in the center, we have Dorit Dot, Chief Product and Technology Officer, Checkpoint Software Technologies from Israel. Last but not least, we have Robert Lee, CEO of Dragos, and he's also on the Committee of Cyber Resilience. Very happy to have you here, my fellow panelists. So in the past 2 years, we've seen major security breaches across sectors. Without further ado, let me open the floor with you, Alexander. Could you please tell us, give us an overview of the situation, why we are here, what's your vision, what's the plan?
Great. Well, thank you very much. As my colleague said, my name is Alexander Klimberg. I'm the head of the Center for Cybersecurity at the World Economic Forum. We have about 120 partners, run about 10 different initiatives, but this is one initiative we're really passionate about. And for the very first time today, 18 leading organizations are coming together to help expand an industry-focused ecosystem around cyber resilience. And this is incredibly important because as one of our Report to Cyber Outlook report showed, what actually cyber professionals are most worried about when they talk about their own personal cyber exposure is breakdown of critical infrastructure. And that is actually something that we need to start now addressing, in particular within the energy sector. And when you look at it, overall cybercrime has been predicted to reach $10.5 trillion next year. Now, if that number is anywhere near right, that would be nearly twice the number of the entire benefit of the ICT industry. So it just gives you an indication of either we need better academic research or we really have a massive problem on our hands. One way we were trying to address the issue of cyber resilience is effectively rolling out a cyber resilience pledge. And in this case, we have these 18 organizations who have come together around 6 specific principles to help expand their commitment to their ecosystem. This will be a first step. We are very grateful for our oil and gas colleagues for leading the charge on the most important topic of operational technology, building out critical infrastructure protection and similar. But we hope to expand this because our idea is that we want to move security from a cost to part of your value proposition. Companies should be proud of the fact that they're doing security. Customers should reward them for doing that. And that's why I'm very grateful for the security professionals who are here today, who will make the point from the security professional point of view of why it is so important that we move the security discussion from being a cost to a value proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander, for revealing this very ambitious pledge with us. Let me come to you, Jen. We've seen in the past several very high-profile cyber incidents on the need for cyber resilience. Under your leadership, your organization, your agency has championed a lot of efforts. Tell us why this is important to take a collective action.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. It's great to be here. And whenever I hear ambition and cybersecurity in the same sentence, it makes me very happy. You know, as the leader of America's Cyber Defense Agency, our mission is to understand, manage, and reduce risk to the critical infrastructure Americans rely on every day to get water and power and transportation, money from the bank, gas from the gas station. But at the end of the day, we know that global infrastructure is all connected. We can't just say we're going to protect the American homeland or we're going to protect a place in Europe. We know that we have to partner together to enable us to understand the threat so we can drive down risks to our networks globally. We, of course, saw over the past year with attacks against solar winds, the global technology supply chain, the attack against Colonial Pipeline last May was a real wake-up call, again, about how cyber attacks can cause real impacts to the lives of Americans. And so I am just really pleased on two fronts here. First, to be able to come here and see this pledge in a multilateral way with companies around the world coming together to focus on cyber resilience, incredibly important because we know in today's highly connected world, it is increasingly difficult to prevent bad things from happening. So what we need to do is to ensure we can detect threats and we can respond to them and we can recover quickly to mitigate risk to our businesses, but really to our national security, just given, again, the interconnectedness and the interdependence. And I'm also very glad to be here to recognize that this is, in fact, a global issue, but one that necessitates and really mandates, probably demands is a better word, a highly ambitious agenda that is focused on collective cyber defense. So for us, that's across the federal government, across our state and local partners, across industry, and very importantly, across all of our international partners. So very glad today to see this pledge happening and hope we see more of it.
Thank you very much, Jen. Absolutely. Global issues will need global solutions. And let me come to you, Dorit. You are also part of this signatory pledge. What do you think this pledge will drive? What impact are you expecting?
Thank you very much. And extending from Jen, I'm really proud to be part of a global player that operates both in the US and in all countries. And for nearly 30 years, we've been working with industries, local government, national governments, well around the globe. And critical infrastructure is specifically dear to our heart because of the importance of it as a key element of everything. And we know that there is an attack landscape that is real on critical infrastructure, from water to energy. We've seen examples all over the world. And so one of the dearest points for me inside this pledge is the fact that it's one of its main tenets is building by design. And we truly believe in building by design and helping construct into critical infrastructure the prevention and the security elements that would make it by design secure. And we owe to ourselves to have our critical infrastructure secured. So I really look forward to such pledges, bringing together industries and governments and all kinds of entities into really protecting this critical part of our usage in life, let's call it.
Thank you, Dorit. Absolutely, we need global collaboration on this. Robert, as you know that this pledge has mobilized several actors, especially from oil and gas industries, asking them to commit collective action. Why, in your view, this is important?
Yeah, absolutely. So the oil and gas community especially is obviously going through a large transition as we try to get to a more equitable and sustainable energy system. And what made me really proud of this pledge is it's not just the pledge, but if you go to the World Economic Forum site on it, you will also find that there's a playbook associated with it. So it's the importance of the pledge, but the playbook was actually designed by members from the community. They all came together on the subcommittee to make it. And that playbook not only has high-level guidance for board of directors and executives and what they should be asking and really, as Jen said, demanding of this topic, but it also has case studies and things to make it practical. As an example, and again to kind of highlight one of the points Jen made about impact, as there's a case study in the report that talks about a cyber attack on an oil and gas facility where the adversary actually tried to kill people at that plant by targeting safety systems. So when we're talking about cybersecurity, it's not just data and identity and credit cards. Those are important. But we're also talking about human life. And so there's really nothing more important than when we talk about collective action and coming together and making these topics really front and center than really protecting our people and our citizens and our community members. So I'm really excited about that, and that's one of the reasons that I think this is so impactful.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to thank you, our panel, and me open the floor for questions. We have a couple of mics in the room, and please feel free to raise your hand. Let us know your organization and your questions. Also, we would like to keep questions relevant to this topic, please. Do we have any show hands? Yes.
Hi, I'm Sumit from Beyond TV channel from India. I would like to know how has the threat increased in the current environment, especially post the Ukraine-Russia war, and are we really now geared up to tackle more of such threats going forward?
Thank you. Jen, would you like to take it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Obviously, we remain concerned all the time, just given what the threat environment has evolved over the past several years. Obviously, nation-state threats, criminal threats. And then over the past 5 months, we at CISA have spent time working with our international partners and with our industry partners to make sure that they understand the threat environment and the implications of what might come out of the unprovoked and illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine. In particular, we know that malicious cyber activity is part of the Russian playbook. So we have been concerned not only about the attacks against Ukraine specifically, which have been wiper attacks and destructive attacks and denial of service attacks that have affected Ukrainian government organizations, critical infrastructure, and some which actually have had bleed-over effects into Europe, given the recently attributed attack against VSAT technology, communications technology. So we have been working hand in hand with all of our partners to also anticipate the potential for any attacks that might affect our critical infrastructure here at home. President Biden, of course, talked about this about a month ago, where we had evidence of the Russians exploring attacks against our critical infrastructure. So we have been doing everything we can with our Shields Up campaign to make sure that our businesses, large and small, are prepared and understand what they need to do to mitigate this risk. And we continue to work very closely, again, with our international and our industry partners to protect our infrastructure.
Thank you, Jen. Any other questions? Jennifer?
Yes. I wanted to ask,
Could
even
you,
though
could
it
you
makes...
state your
Oh,
name
sorry.
and
I'm
organization,
Jennifer
please?
Shanker, and I'm editor-in-chief of The Innovator. And I wanted to ask, there's been a lot of fear among large companies about exposing their vulnerabilities, and even if it makes a lot of sense to exchange information and best practice, companies have been reluctant to do so in the past. So how have you overcome those challenges? What makes you confident that companies will really be willing to do this?
So that's an excellent question, and thank you. It goes to the heart of the problem of sometimes, from a government perspective, do you have your defender agency and your attacker agency in the same group or not? And most governments have decided to separate that because you need to build trust. Still, even with the governments have taken that route and have built a lot of trust with the private sector, there's still some resistance to share it because you don't really know where it's going to go. So one of the ways to supplement that is we try to take an industry-specific approach, because within the industry, very often they are aware that they might compete on price, they might compete with customers, but in the end of the day, if one of them gets hacked through a vulnerability that they all share, they will all get hacked, and it'll all be bad for them. So that's why we're taking this ecosystem-based approach, because our hope is that increased information sharing amongst those various actors will contribute to effectively an increased collaborative space. So like Jen talked about, the joint cyber defense component that the US government does, we're hoping to increase that or focus that within an industry narrative, but internationally, not obviously focused with one region or country. And that is basically based on the idea that you share information best in a small group, in a trust group, in a group of like-minded and peers. And that has been the success so far, but you have to be encouraged, it has to be grown, it doesn't come out of nothing.
Just to add on to that point, I mean, this idea of operational collaboration as a transformative agent for raising the bar on cybersecurity, I think is so fundamentally important, because as we know, everything is connected and therefore everything is vulnerable. So to Alex's point, one of the things that we stood up right before the Ukraine invasion was essentially these trust sharing groups between the agencies of the federal government and 25 of the biggest technology companies in the world, 22 of the biggest banks, and 38 of the biggest energy companies, where we're all sharing information so that we can identify those dots of malicious activity and suspicious activity, we can connect those dots, and then we can drive down risk to the nation and really the globe, because these are global companies at scale. Look, governments can't do this alone. Industry can't do it alone. If we don't come together and share information for the good of the systemic stability of our infrastructure, we are not going to succeed in this very complex mission.
Dorit,
Yeah,
yes.
one more addition. We are members of the Cyber Threat Alliance, which is an organization that deals a lot with sharing. And I think we have a pretty good model of sharing between industry entities, because it's realized that everything is a global problem, and we represent different companies, different missions, and we all do come together and share. So we act upon specific threats, but we share on a regular basis. And I think over time we will create more models like this that would actually work.
Robert, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just note and pay a compliment here to CISA and what they did this past year as well, where it's been many governments' positions for a long time, maybe not overtly, but just accidentally, that they partner very closely with the entities, the oil companies, the electric companies, et cetera, but not necessarily the vendors. So what Jim was talking about with the JCDC and the various initiatives of bringing partners together, it's added those vendors that have expertise and services and so forth into that discussion. And the reason I think most people miss why that's so important is if you have a Fortune 500 company, they're probably in the room, they probably have the expertise, they can probably share that insight. But if you talk about the small and medium businesses, very often they are leaning entirely on managed service providers and various vendors. So to have them in the discussion, make sure that it's not just the big companies that benefit, but also all of our community, especially those smaller members.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions from the audience? On this note, I would like to first thank all the panelists for these very wonderful insights. And I also want to thank everybody in the room and our audience following us on live stream. Thank you for following us, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.